N'Keal Harry was an absolute steal at 32. What are you guys talking about? Forget Tom Brady's passing numbers. He's the GOAT because he was the best punter in the NFL. I take Johnny Hekker over Patrick Mahomes to be my quarterback any day.
Welcome to the No Punt Intended Sportscast with your host, Parody07.
Yes, welcome back. It's us again. The dogs are here. And we got a team-specific pod for you today. We're going to be talking about the best looking team in the league. That's right. Those guys in the powder blue, the Chargers. We are going to have a good time talking about this team because the offense is immaculate and the defense is abysmal. Oh my gosh. How could you average over 30 points a game and have a negative point differential? That just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, we're going to get into it. Very simple. We're just going to give our general thoughts on the Chargers. We'll give you a record prediction. I think we have a LBQB breakdown of the illustrious Justin Herbert. And we'll get into whether or not we think this is a playoff team. I don't usually give away the outline to start, but there we go. So this is a reminder to our fans and to us so that we stay on track because we've gotten used to the weekly thing, talking about our teams and all the rest. But sometimes doing something a little different keeps us fresh. So I guess I usually go last, but I think I'm going to start us off with just the general thoughts of the Los Angeles Chargers. So they are currently 1-2. They've been a perennial playoff team for the past 3 or 4 years as a wild card because the Chiefs are freaking good. So we have a team that is averaging just under 30 points a game, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, that'd be just under 30 points. The quarterback is playing MVP caliber football, and nobody's talking about it. Let me tell you, last week alone against the Vikings, I think he only missed 7 throws and he threw the ball 47 times.
Wow, that's correct.
No interceptions. I mean,
he has no interceptions all season so far.
No interceptions all season. Almost 75% completion percentage through 3 games. Wow. That Tennessee defense is nothing to sniff at, and Minnesota blitzed the ever-living daylights out of Justin Herbert last week, and his pocket presence has been absolutely immaculate. I know I'm kind of dabbling into what I'm sure LB's going to talk about, but I was extremely impressed with his pocket presence. He's always looking for another throw downfield. He's not quick to run. He's very mobile, but he's not a runner, which is similar to what people like Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger, where they're not really runners, but they're very mobile and being able to give themselves a little bit more time to find a guy open downfield. And he has a plethora of options between Gerald Everett at tight end. He hasn't had Austin Eckler, which made last week's performance even that much more impressive. And he usually has Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and then they added Quentin Johnston from TCU this year. Mike Williams got hurt last game, but Quentin Johnston is basically the same type of player as Mike Williams, just obviously he's a rookie and less established. So that should be a very similar, maybe not a 1-for-1, but a 1-for-1.5 switch. So that'll be good. I don't think they'll miss a beat with that. I mean, losing their best offensive piece in Austin Eckler and being able to put up all that production on the Minnesota Vikings is rather impressive. The other thing about the Chargers is that you would think, okay, they got all this offense going on. You would think with the Chargers' offensive production that they would have an offensive head coach. And with their defense being ranked 28th in points per game and 31st in yards, that surely their entire coaching staff is offensive minded, minus obviously the defensive coordinator and the probably 2 or 3 coaches underneath him if there's all this offense going on, right? Wrong. Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, by the way, his deal is defense. That's what he's quote unquote known for. And his defense has not been good ever since he's been there. And it's not like they don't have dogs to do it. They have Joey Bosa, who's a top 5 pass rusher in the league. They have Derwin James, which is a top 5 safety in the league. And next to them, they got Khalil Mack, who I don't need to say anything about Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
They've got I'm blanking on his name, but they have
J.C. Jackson.
Yeah, they have J.C. Jackson and Asante Samuel Jr., so 2 ball hawks at corner. And J.C. Jackson's been benched a couple times this year already.
Healthy scratch.
I have no clue what they're doing with him. I'm glad he's not in New England anymore after seeing everything that's gone on with him. But hey, I mean, if you got a dog, you better play him. And especially the way they're paying him, you would think they would, at the very least, the sunk cost fallacy would put him on the field.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best at taking away big bodied receivers. Now, the Minnesota Vikings don't really have that, but the Tennessee Titans do, and DeAndre Hopkins, and JC didn't really play very much there either. So I don't know what they're doing. And it's like they're blaming him for their poor game planning in putting him one-on-one with Tyreek Hill. He is not designed to play that kind of receiver. He's supposed to be taking away the big guy. I mean, when he was in New England, his best role was actually being a Travis Kelce eraser. That's what he did. When the other team had a really athletic tight end, we put him on him when we had Gilmore and a few other guys. But once he was the dude, we put him on the Jamar Chases, the T. Higgins, those sorts of players, the Mike Williams. And then we would find a way with the other guys. We didn't like even when he was here, we didn't put him on Tyreek when Tyreek came to town. We put Jonathan Jones on Tyreek. So it's just a complete misappropriation of assets. And what's frustrating at watching from just a fan standpoint, even though I like the Chargers, I'm not a diehard fan or nothing, but I've got some family and friends that like the Chargers, and just because I like those family members and friends, I tend to like the Chargers, and they're fun to watch because they're offensive minded, and Herbert's a beast, and they have the best jersey in the NFL. But it's just so frustrating to see the amount of talent that they have on defense, and it's not being used well. I just a little thought experiment I had. I was like, what would Bill Belichick do with these pieces? Or what would somebody like Vic Fangio or some of these defensive minded head coaches, what they would do with the type of pieces they have with Khalil Mack and Derwin James and Kenneth Murray, I think is the name of the linebacker that they have. That's pretty okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And I'm sure Chiefs fans are grateful that they don't understand, because if the Chargers ever got their defense to be not even average, just slightly below average, like if they had a defense that was like 18th or something like that, it'd be hard to beat them.
I mean, they used to have a decent defense before,
Staley.
The Staley effect.
Yeah, that happened. Defense is stale. I'll tell you that much right now.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely stale. So that's just my general thoughts. And my frustration is that there's good players on both sides of the ball. Kellen Moore is absolutely in the lab making Justin Herbert look like an MVP, and he should be in the running for MVP, but nobody's talking about him because they're 1-2. But he's got less interceptions than Tua. He's got just as many yards as some of the top. I think he was 4th in the league right now, behind Kirk Cousins and Tua and one other. I don't remember.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he is just slinging the ball over the yard. The ball is only ending up in the receiver's hands and not in the cornerback's hands. And he is just playing good ball. And it's just such a shame that people aren't talking about it, because I think if people realize the type of season he's having, they would be remiss to not include him in the MVP race. I mean, if he has the production he has been having, he would break Peyton Manning's passing record for yards in the season. Now, obviously, there's some other quarterbacks that are throwing for a few more yards, but it's literally a difference of 50 yards over 3 games. So his style of play seems to be the most sustainable, though. So we'll see how things go. This is a team that's fun to watch, but I'm sure is frustrating to watch lose, because they have all the talent in the world and just can't seem to put it together. And they've basically been in the coaching hole since they got rid of Norv Turner. They had the one guy, I forget his name, that did an okay job. But again, it just seems like that whole organization, even moving from San Diego to Los Angeles, which I don't understand that either. But I mean, look, these people have a lot more money and have a lot more business sense, so I'll let them make those sorts of decisions. You know, as long as they don't change the jerseys, I'm going to continue to hope that they succeed so I can watch them. And it helps, too, that they just can't beat New England either. I don't know what it is about it, but Mac beat Justin Herbert a couple years ago. When the Chargers had a better team than us, Brady made them look like Swiss cheese. I mean, just absolute. Chargers in New England is a great little rivalry that people don't talk about because it's been very one-sided, but it's just one of those things that it's funny to think that this team that has every opportunity to really win like 13 to 15 games this year probably won't, because their head coach, that's meant to be a defensive guy, has no clue what he's doing. And if he does have a clue what he's doing, it's just not working, and he's refusing to change, and he's stubborn. So that's my general thoughts on the Los Angeles Chargers. LB,
Yeah.
what do you got to say?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the selling point for this team is definitely Justin Herbert, and this team is going to go as he goes. They're going to need every single point they get every weekend because their defense can't stop anybody. Week 1, they played Miami. They lost by 2, 34-36. Week 2, they lost to Tennessee in a 24-27 game. And then week 3, they finally got their first win against Minnesota, winning 28-24. So obviously having 2 losses by combined 5 points is rough. And that's the difference in this league record-wise, is can you find ways to win those one-score games? Last year, Minnesota, for example, they were like 11-0 in one-score games. Now this year, they're 0-3 off the bat. So the style of play of Herbert is awesome. He's a gunslinger. He's lighting it up this year. Super fun to watch, and I think he'll continue to have success. Personally, through his stats, I'm not sure about the team's overall success because, like again, I said that defense seems pretty weak, despite having really good position players. And you would think, like you mentioned earlier, with the defense-minded head coach and some of these key players on defense, that they would be able to find ways to stop teams from scoring. And I think the way the coach decides to go for some of these questionable calls and 4th down or going forward on and within field goal range and not taking points and things like that, I think it's very aggressive, and it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, if you get it, great, you look like a genius, and you're really putting the pressure on the opposing offense, and you're helping your defense out, especially if your offense converts for touchdowns. And by going for it, you're saying you have faith in your defense if you're unsuccessful on offense. However, their defense has not stopped anybody. They've given up a lot of points this year, and so I think for their season success, they're going to have to probably reevaluate some of those decisions, especially late in the game. I think that's going to come back to hurt him. He's a big stat guy. And the thing is about stats, there's always stats to support whatever side of the argument you want to take. You can pick and choose pro and cons and make yourself sound like a genius. And then, someone who disagrees with you can make you sound like a moron because they have just as many stats to prove their point. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, man, Justin Herbert, he's a baller. He's going to have to continue to ball out if they want to have any sustained success, especially being in that division playing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. They are probably not favored to win that division. And I don't think anybody's betting on them to win that division. So I think they're really gunning for second place. And I think that's kind of their ceiling in terms of that division, being behind Mahomes and the Chiefs. But yeah, dude, it's interesting when you have a guy playing that well on offense and to have 0 turnovers on the year from Herbert. You would think you would have another win or two, but like I said, those 1-loss games, man, it's tough. When you got a guy playing that well, an elite franchise quarterback, you would expect your team to be in a winning position more often, and they're just going to have to really lean on that offense and just outscore everybody, because as of it right now, it doesn't seem like they're going to stop many people.
For sure. Yeah, and that offensive line is giving Herbert plenty of time too. This is probably the best offensive line the Chargers have had since Phillip Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson were on the team. So it's a really, really good team offensively. What do you see, Mr. Hound? I know you're typically the stats guy, but I rattled some stuff off for you to hold my own.
Yeah. So in the first 2 games that they lost, because they won last week, so that's good. But the first 2 games that they lost, they were the 33rd team in the Super Bowl era with 50 plus points and no turnovers through 2 games. But they were the only team of those 33 to ever go to 0-2. So, it's kind of what everyone's been saying, is that it's all a very good offense. And again, on paper, their defense seems like it should be fine. Like, they've got more big name players than the Chiefs do, than a lot of teams do. But for some reason, their defense is not doing very well. And you have to put that on Brandon Staley. Now, sure. I did some research on Brandon Staley because, like, I've he's in our division, so I know who he is, but I didn't really know a lot about him. Mm-hmm. It's like, where did he come from? Because I didn't really recognize the name until they hired him.
Right.
And he was the Rams defensive coordinator in 2020, and then he was hired in 2021. With the Chargers. He was never he's never been a head coach before at any level, college or NFL. And he was a defensive coordinator at the NFL level for only 1 season.
Wow.
And for about 5 seasons, he was the linebackers coach. And then he was the Rams defensive coordinator for 1 season, and then he becomes the head coach. He's only 40 years old, I want to say. So I think this is a lot of you have an individual who's just not very experienced. Being a head coach is a tough job. And I don't know if he really has the tool set at this moment to be a great head coach. To be fair, his record is 20-18 with the Chargers. So if anyone was to look at that, it's like, hey, at least he has a winning record with the Chargers. But when you look at how good the Chargers roster is, it should not even be near 500. It should be way above that, record wise. But if I was to guess, I have a feeling he's going to get fired after this season. I doubt they'll fire him during the season unless it really goes bad. But I don't see him sticking around for very much longer because of their offensive coordinator. Because their offensive coordinator is Kellen Moore, who was the offensive coordinator with the Cowboys. And there's a lot of people who thought that Kellen Moore could be a head coach, but he ended up just being the offensive coordinator of the Chargers. So I have a feeling that the Chargers will end up firing Brandon Staley if nothing big changes, and then just kind of slot in Kellen Moore from offensive coordinator to head coach. Because then you have your offensive coach who now knows the team, who I'm assuming Justin Herbert likes since he's doing very well with them. So I think that's probably what's in the future for the Chargers at the moment. So yeah, it's a lot of it comes down to coaching. I think a lot of people forget how important a good head coach is. And I think you look at the Chargers, you see how good their team is, but the head coach is really hindering them. So yeah.
It's such a shame that these players who give their heart and soul to the grind are not put in their best position to win. You know, when Andy Reid makes a mistake like that, you know, he doesn't have very many of those mistakes. Neither do coaches like Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick and that sort of thing. It's frustrating when they do one or two things that's not in the best interest of the team. But when it's the norm, it's insane how every teams, even beat writers and analysts that aren't even analysts or beat writers for the Chargers, he's the consensus worst coach in the league. Like it's nobody really thinks he's that good of a coach. And Mike McCarthy is coaching. So it's like and to be fair, Mike McCarthy is not a terrible coach. He's just old school and people don't like that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where if the Chargers want to take another step, they have to be willing to make that change. And I don't know what that change looks like. I don't know if it's just a head coaching job, because there's this thing with having talent and not being able to put it together to make a run is something that has plagued them for years. Now, they've had the short end of the stick. Like, they were 14-2, if I'm not mistaken, the year that New England went undefeated, and they ran into that undefeated New England team in the playoffs, and they just got buzzsawed. You know,
probably.
I think so. And if it wasn't the 16-0 season, it was a season relatively close to it. Yeah. And we had a really good game against them and beat them in Foxborough. Or in San Diego at the time. I'm not 100% sure. I want to say it was in Foxborough, which makes me think, because if they went 14-2, you know, then New England had to have had a better record than them. So
no, it's a problem with the Chargers is that they always have interesting head coaches. Look, they've never really had an amazing head coach recently.
Definitely recently.
They had Brandon Staley, they've had since 2021. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was Anthony Lynn.
I liked him.
Everyone, he was fine. And I mean, in all honesty, his record was fine. Yeah, it was again above 500, but it just never got over that, lift. And you have a lot of guys who are good, but it's like maybe they're better as a coordinator than a head coach, right? Before that, you had Mike McCoy for a while from 2013 to 2016. And he had a losing record with the Chargers. And that was during, the Phillip Rivers era, right? But you just have these coaches where, it's like, you'll forget about in 10 years, And it's really hard to win in this league with a subpar head coach. It's hard.
It is.
So,
No, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I mean, because like the Chiefs were they were a poverty franchise more or less until Andy Reid showed up. More or less. Like we had okay seasons and stuff like that, but like we hadn't won a playoff game or even hosted a home playoff game since 1992. And it's all this stuff, and Yeah, we hadn't been to the Super Bowl since, the fourth Super Bowl ever in 1970 or whatever. So having a head coach really impacts the environment, of that team.
For sure.
So, yeah, it's very important.
For sure. And I think sometimes head coaching can be a few different things, right? Like you got people like Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay who kind of do both the offensive coordinator and the head coaching responsibilities in tandem.
Yeah.
And you have defensive coaches that kind of do the same thing with the defense. Bill Belichick did it for a while, but now Bill Belichick, I think similar to, though Andy Reid definitely has his hand all over the Kansas City offense, I feel like both them, Mike Tomlin, those sorts of coaches thrive off of delegating responsibilities to really talented coaches underneath them and allow them to grow and shine and that sort of thing. And then the head coach, Bill Belichick, this was one of the things about Bill Belichick this season with hiring Bill O'Brien is now that Bill Belichick doesn't have to worry about the offense anymore, he can get back in the lab and start cooking up some really good special teams and defensive stuff. The special teams especially has really benefited from that. So it's a night and day difference with that. So just as a handful of examples. So Kellen Moore is probably the most likely person to be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. But I think if they were to find, I think their step needs to be an overhaul of the defensive coaching staff and getting them that ship righted first before they worry about the head coach.
Well, the problem is your head coach is kind of the defensive guy, right?
Yeah, Derek Ainsley is the defensive coordinator. I've never heard of him, so I don't have any.
So, it's because I don't know, because obviously Brandon Staley has the history with being a defensive coordinator and stuff, but I don't know how much of a hand he has in it or not. But I am kind of the modern theory where I believe if you are a team looking for a head coach, I would lean towards more of having an offensive head coach if you've got a good quarterback. Like if you have a quarterback like Herbert, like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, having an offensive head coach that you can trust on is important, mainly because you don't want them to leave. Because what you don't want is having like 5 different offensive coordinators with your young quarterback going in and out, right?
Right.
So you want to have some sort of consistency, and you can have more consistency when you lock them in as your head coach, right? They just
that makes
won't
sense.
get signed with somebody else.
Sure.
So if Herbert and Kellen Moore do like meld well together or gel well together, I think that's who they should go with. Because again, you shouldn't have to worry about the offense anyways with that. But yeah, you definitely have to overhaul the defense though, because that is the problem.
For sure. For sure. A name that I think would be a great addition to their defensive room and specifically the defensive coordinator. Get Mr. Wade Phillips, head coach of the XFL's Houston Roughnecks. Yes.
Yep.
So he's making $500,000 in salary, so surely they can offer him more than that to coach those absolute studs that they have down up there in Los Angeles. So
yeah,
I would
that'd be good.
That would be my, if I was at all had any sort of say, I would at least bring him in for an interview.
Yeah, he was the Rams defensive coordinator from 2017 to 2019 in LA.
Yep.
So hopefully he would have some good connections there.
Yep.
Like just in the LA area.
Yep. And brought that defense to a Super Bowl too. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they held the New England offense to 13 points. So
yeah,
it's just the New England defense held them to 3. So
yeah.
You can't be that upset as a defensive coordinator holding Tom Brady to 13 points.
Yeah.
So
yeah, not at all.
So that's just our general thoughts on the Chargers there. LB, do you have a breakdown of Justin Herbert ready for us?
One nice right, ice cream.
What's the difference, really, other than Bailey Zappi looks a little better?
The end zone, touchdown.
Newton throws, end zone, touchdown, Robbie Anderson.
And strong in the pocket, goes through his progressions, and he finds the open man time and time again.
Yeah, I do.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
So this will be the week 3 breakdown against the Vikings. And Justin Herbert had his best game of the season and probably the best game of the year for any quarterback in the league. He went 40 of 47, 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's almost flawless. It doesn't get hardly any better than that. And that offense, even though they just lost their receiver, was it Mike
Williams,
I think.
Yeah,
he's on the injured reserve. They still were able to take some shots in that game. They took 7 shots down the field, completing one for a big touchdown and completing 4 passes over 20 yards. Those chunk plays, especially, you see a lot of those from the West Coast style spread offenses. They're going to throw the ball a lot, as Herbert did here in this game 47 times. And another thing you'll see from the stat sheet is they're really getting the ball outside the hashes on the perimeter, trying to get it to their playmakers. You don't see too many completions inside the hashes or inside the tackle box. A lot of it's on the perimeter, on the outside. Let's get our guys in space, get on the ball, run that hurry up style offense, and put the defense on their heels and continue to push the ball down the field. When you get second and short, third and short, sometimes even taking those shot plays. And so Herbert's doing a great job of distributing the ball. Obviously losing Williams is going to hurt, so it'll be interesting to see how they perform against the Raiders coming up in week 4. But in week 3, he played phenomenal. Having 7 incompletions on the day is a day you dream of as a quarterback. You would love to have 0, but again, it's the NFL. The guys you're playing against are incredibly talented, and they're going to make plays. But going 40-47, 405 yards and 3 touchdowns is awesome. And like we mentioned earlier, he's really carrying this team, and I think he'll continue to do so, especially with days like this. I think he's going to have to continue to put games like this together if they want to have any chance of winning more football games than they did last year. But yeah, man, as you can see from the stat chart, they throw the ball all over the yard, and that's kind of their MO. They are going to ride and die with Justin Herbert, and as they should. He's their best player on offense, and I think he'll continue to produce as he did this week, and I think the sky's the limit for that guy. Hopefully he gets some help on defense, and he won't be irrelevant only because of the continuing losses that this team racks up. Hopefully they can get in the win column some more, and he can get some more spotlight as he rightfully deserves playing this well. And I'm excited to see how he progresses this year. It'll be interesting to see with Staley. We mentioned him a little bit being on the hot seat, or his seat potentially getting hot in terms of getting fired. And I think really that started last year in the playoffs when the Chargers blew a 27-0 lead in Jacksonville in the wild card game. So starting 1-2, a slow start, especially when your quarterback's playing this well, I think is, especially if they lose a couple more games, the conversations around Staley are going to heat up. But it's no fault of Justin Herbert. So hopefully he can continue to play well, continue to do his thing, and they're going to really have to rely on him. And, it'll be interesting. I think their ceiling is probably 10-7, 9-8. And again, I don't think that'll be through any fault of Justin Herbert. I think despite his continuing great performances, they'll find ways to lose games due to their decision-making in certain situations, as well as the defense giving up too many points.
Excellent. I have a question for you, LB. So I'm counting 12 completions of his 40 completions were behind the line of scrimmage. As a former quarterback yourself, you would assume most of those are screens and that, or scheme plays like that. What does that tell you about his day and the offense that he's running?
Yeah, so it's probably a combination of a couple things. One could be just check downs. You're going through your progression, and your 1 and 2 reads aren't there. So you find your running back or tight end leaking out into the flat, and you dump the ball off there. So you definitely get some completions that way. Oftentimes, teams will also get the ball out to the flats, throwing the ball as an extension of their run game when they can't run a traditional, zone scheme or whatever like that from the backfield. They'll throw the ball out wide and to these now screens, smoke screens, running back flats, tight into the flats type of thing, and that you know acts as their quasi run game, even though it's a pass. You're getting 2, 3, 4 yards. A completion that'll sometimes be the game plan when you can't run, or you're struggling on offense. So it can be that, and also just they run some of the RPO stuff as well. So you're just getting the ball out quick. The old saying is you can't go broke taking a profit. So if the guy's there and he's open, give him the ball in space. Hopefully he can make a guy miss. He'll get some more yards after the catch. But I think it's a combination of all three. They're intentionally throwing the ball to the flat as an extension of the run game. He's hitting the checkdowns, playing good football, going through his progression, and then, like you said, some of the scheme type of plays. So it's good though when you always love completions. Let your guys get the ball in space, give it to your athletes, playmakers, and let them make you look good. You throw a 5-yard ball, he goes and runs for 20 yards. Hey, we'll take it all day. You know what I mean? So it's some of that, but I think it's all the above, to be honest.
Excellent. Yeah, because whenever New England has a game where they have that many completions close to the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, Patriots media is up in arms that the coaching is holding back the offense, and 405 passing yards and 12 of those completions were completed behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's surely there's some positive plays happening behind when those completions are made, because surely they didn't get hit in the backfield if he had that many passing yards. Similar to the RPO that Bryce had a touchdown on a couple weeks ago, they ran almost an identical play to Parham, one of their receivers, and that was one of the touchdowns when that completion was also, according to this, behind the line of scrimmage. So there's definitely ways to go about it, and like you mentioned, the RPOs and that sort of thing. I think that adds it's an extension of the running game, or is linked to the running game's efficiency. So even though they didn't have Austin Eckler, they put a little bit more on Mr. Herbert to get the job done, and with a little luck, he definitely did. He definitely did, despite the horrible position that Brandon Staley put him in at the end of the game. Going for it on their own 37 or something like that, and giving Kirk Cousins a minute and a half to go 35 yards to score a touchdown with a timeout. So that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for your defense as well,
For sure. Yeah, and that defense came through once, and that was all it took.
Yeah.
So now we're going to thank you for that breakdown, by the way. We're going to go to the record predictions. So obviously the Chargers are in the AFC West, so they have to play the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chiefs twice. They also play the Cowboys, Bears, Jets, Lions, Packers, Ravens, Patriots, and the Bills. So they have the AFC East, it looks like, and they have the NFC North. So, and then the extra game being the Cowboys. So kind of not a cakewalk, that's for sure. Definitely not a cakewalk. So we'll see what's in store for them. But they're 1-2 right now. LB, I think you said 9-8, 10-7, somewhere in there. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think what they'll end up at is going to be 9-8, make a wild card spot. I think their ceiling's a lot higher than that. I think they could win 11, 12 games. I just don't have confidence that they will, with the defense giving up too many points and some of the decision making, like you just mentioned, late in the game against the Vikings. That's one possession from being 0-3, based on giving Kirk the ball late with a chance to go win it.
For sure.
I think that's going to be their Achilles heel, and they're going to live and die, live and die by the aggressiveness in the play calling on defense and going forward on offense and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm sticking with 9-8 and making a wild card.
Okay, excellent. Hound, what is your what is Matt Nagy's crystal bald head say about the Chargers' hopes and dreams this season?
Okay, so I'm going to go 8-9.
Oh, a losing record.
8-9 because here's my logic. Are they a good team? Yes. And if you had a good coach, I bet they could have double-digit wins. But I feel that they're going to lose a few games because they do have a tough schedule. They do.
Yep.
And I think the desperation is going to start setting in because Brandon Staley will know that he has to win. And that's never a good spot if you are trying to win games. So I think there's going to be a lot of desperation, frustration, and, probably like half the team's going to be injured with an ACL. Who knows?
True.
But so I think that it's going to kind of just slowly crumble as the season goes on to an 8-9 record, and make a pretty clear picture that they need to move on from Brandon Staley.
Very good. Very good. And that won't be enough to make the playoffs, most likely.
No.
So I have them. I'm more optimistic because I just think this offense is so good. And some of they play the Raiders twice. I have them beating the Raiders both times. They're going to beat the brakes of the Broncos both times. I have them splitting with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs benefited from a really lackluster Bears team last week. And, it's funny because if I was to if you were to ask me what are some teams that you can compare the Chargers to, and it's funny, but the two teams I would compare them to are two teams that they have played or are going to play. I feel like really they're almost 1-for-1 the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it's just
Yep.
Great quarterback play. The biggest difference is for the Minnesota Vikings is there's the team, the offense around is letting Kirk down, but with turnovers and fumbles and that sort of thing, and the Chargers only have one turnover on the entire season. So they're doing their part to help Herbert be successful, and that stat line that LB talked about really shows that Kirk has had to do it on his own and then some. So that's part of I think that was the difference in the game there. And then the other team they kind of remind me of is the Dallas Cowboys. They have all this talent on both sides of the ball and find a way to disappoint their fans every year. So that's the two teams I kind of think of, and they play the Cowboys week 6 after the bye. So an early bye really hurts them too, for sure. Now it'll be nice that Mike Williams and Austin Eckler can kind of get healthy. There's a few defensive players that they have that are not 100% healthy. I'm not counting on this coaching staff to get it done, but maybe they can do kind of a 180 on their defense a little bit during the bye week and kind of reset it for the rest of the season. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
Yeah.
So the fact that Christian Gonzalez has infinitely more snaps than JC Jackson does on the season is absolutely amazing. That alone is a crazy notion to me. But I have them going 10-7. I think they split with the Chiefs. I think they beat the Bears, the Jets, the Packers, and the Ravens. They always play the Ravens tough. I don't know what it is about that, but that Chargers-Ravens matchup always is a good one. They lose to the Patriots because just that's what they do. I don't know why. They'll lose to Detroit. And obviously, their division games are going to give them 4 wins alone by themselves. But if they lose to the Raiders this week, it'll be the sky is falling in Los Angeles.
In all honesty, they could.
Yeah.
The Chargers are favored, but they could.
No,
the Raiders
sure.
do have the talent. It just you haven't really seen it manifest with the Raiders, really.
Yeah, it's tough.
They've got good weapons and stuff like that, but when you've got Jimmy G and Josh McDaniels, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Now, to qualify, this is head coach Josh McDaniels, not offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels.
No, exactly.
Very different.
Yeah, big difference.
Big difference.
Very big difference.
Big difference, for sure.
Yeah.
So to kind of end this, I figure we kind of did with the Dolphins when we did the Dolphins episode. And by the way, I need to apologize to the Dolphins fans. I had a really bad episode as a host, and I apologize. And I have had some of you graciously tell me that it wasn't a really good performance by me. The DAWGS did a good job, but I didn't, so I apologize. And if the Miami Dolphins episode is the worst episode I've ever done, then honestly, I'm not that upset. So
that's funny.
but I still love all my friends who are Dolphins fans, and because I live in South Florida, there's a lot of them. So we're gonna do some Capper Fact. The return of Capper Fact, one of our favorite segments. Yeah, one of our favorite segments. So we got
Stop the cap.
Cap.
That's the fact, Jack.
And fact. All right. And the question I pose to you, gentlemen, is: do the Chargers win a playoff game this year? Do the Chargers win a playoff game this year? I feel like I'm a teacher. But we'll start with Hound. Cap or fact?
I mean, I have to go Cap because if my record is correct, which I mean, I obviously believe it will be, then they're not even going to make the playoffs and therefore not even, win a playoff game. But even if they were to make the playoffs, I have a feeling that they would have disappointment because it's the Chargers and still lose a playoff game. So
there you go.
I say Cap.
According to Hound.
Stop the cap.
It's Cap. They're not winning a playoff game this year. LB, those 9-8 Chargers, according to you, do they win a playoff game?
I'm going to go yes. I think they will win this year. I think this is a total backing into this answer, but it depends on who they play.
Sure.
But them being in a wild card position, if my prediction's right, I think they can beat the wild card team, the other wild card team in the AFC. But I think that's where the road ends for them. I'd be super surprised if they go past the wild card and then win a divisional game in the playoffs. But, stranger things have happened, and we'll see. But I think they do. I think they get to the wild card and they win it because I think Justin Herbert is going to ball out this year. And he should be in the conversation for MVP despite his team not having a winning record or being barely above 500 when it's all said and done.
For sure. Stay healthy, Mr. Herbert. But according to LB, Justin Herbert, you are enough to win a playoff game.
That's the fact, Jack.
'Tis a fact, according to LB. For me, I have them making the playoffs. I obviously had the most optimistic record out of the three of you, which is hilarious because I'm usually a little bit more pessimistic and critical of other teams other than the Patriots.
Well, you're still critical of the Patriots anyways.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Especially the last few weeks. Weeks. Yeah, I got enough Boston blood in me to be honest with myself and also be stubborn. So
yeah.
And once you break a Bostonian's stubbornness, then we just get sad and salty, and then we become stubborn for the very opposite take of what we were stubborn for. So but I have them going 10-7.
Mhm.
I have them losing to an AFC South team. I'm sorry. They're going to lose to an AFC South team like they do every year. They're going to run into, like, I don't know. I don't even know who's going to make the playoffs out of the AFC South, because it was supposed to be the Jaguars, but there's not
I think they'll get it right.
Yeah.
I think the Jaguars get it
They
right.
have the most potential.
I think it's a repeat, like you said. They lose again. You're saying they lose. I think Chargers get revenge this year after blowing the 27-0 lead.
There you go. Well,
go
ahead.
I was about to say is one bold prediction of mine was that every AFC division except the Chiefs would be a different division winner.
Yeah.
And right now that prediction is not looking too bad.
No.
The Dolphins leading their division, depending on what happens with the Bills, the Ravens in the AFC North, and, all those teams besides the Bengals are doing decently well. And then the AFC South, you've got Colts and Texans just kind of coming out of nowhere. So
yeah, who's leading that division right now?
It's not the Jaguars.
Is it the Titans?
The Colts are winning that division at 2-1, surprisingly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew's come in twice the last 2 weeks, and
my boy Gardner.
Boys.
Yeah,
I really like Gardner Minshew.
For sure. Minshew Mania was one of the best little fads that ever happened in my lifetime. That was one of all the mustaches, just everybody looking like Dr. Disrespect out there. So
that's true.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. But just to wrap up my thought, will the Chargers win a playoff game this year?
Stop the cap.
Nah, no shot. No shot. No. They either going to run into an AFC South team that's going to surprise them, or they're going to run into a team like the Miami Dolphins or something like that that's just going to buzzsaw them and leave no stone unturned, and the stale defense will be their demise.
Yeah.
So that's the Los Angeles Chargers. So thanks. I meant to give him credit, but CJ Racing once again with the comment. I want to read it because actually it was really good comment. Can you all discuss how the Chargers have been the same team for 20 years, even after going as far as to move cities? So that's a fantastic comment. So if you all want us to talk about your favorite team or your least favorite team, or just a team that's not the Patriots, Panthers, or Kansas City Chiefs, feel free to leave a comment. We'll definitely take a look at it. If you have questions, you can definitely leave a comment, and we'll definitely look into it. Check out the Instagram page for updates and for a few memes a week or whatever have you. If you have any questions, you can also that you want us to consider, then you can put that in the comments on the Instagram or on the YouTube page. So thanks again for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and have a blessed week.
Thank you for listening to the No Punt Intended Sportscast. Be sure to check out the Thinking Hound and to like, share, and subscribe.